Hey there, folks. So, building upon my stream from last week in regards to getting Lando set up running browser sync with Drupal 8 and Radix theme, I was talking with someone today on Slack about a similar issue they're having with getting Laravel with Laravel Mix to run the hot module reloading. I haven't actually tried this out myself, so I'm actually just gonna go ahead and kind of see how it works. I'm gonna try spinning up a new Laravel app and see if I can get hot module reloading working through Lando using pretty much the same kind of setup we used for the last video, which is up on YouTube if you want to go watch how to get things running with browser sync. So I've got on the screen here, you can see I've got the Laravel docs up. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started just installing Laravel. So they want us to require the installer. I think we've already got that. So if I run Laravel, oh, I don't have it actually. Let's do composer, global require Laravel installer. Hopefully this works. I don't know if I have composer set up for global install on this machine because I usually use Lando on this machine. But let's just try Laravel, see if it works. Yeah, okay, it works. Let's do Laravel new. I'll just call it HMR test. Sounds fine. Yeah, why not? All right, cool beans. We've got some stuff there. So now that we've got that going, let's see the HMR test. And let's knit a new Lando app. Let's go ahead and say let's do it with the current working directory. We want a Laravel app. And Laravel's doc root is always public, or at least this is the default. We'll call it HMR test because that matches what we said we'd call it. So I'm going to go ahead and mess with the lando.yaml that gets spit out. I always like to run things via Nginx. I'm just used to that, not running things with Apache. Let's see, we don't have to worry about caches or anything yet, so let's not go crazy with the setup here. So let's just do services node type is node, of course. This is really similar to what we did last week. So the general idea is we're going to have a node server that's going to run our Webpack server, our dev server. And that node service is going to be its own container that's only concerned about running front-end build assets. It's not concerned about anything else. So it needs to be a service of type node, and I'm just calling it node. Why don't we let's mix it up. Let's actually name our service something else so that we don't get stuck thinking that it can only be called what the thing is. So why don't we just call it Webpack? Sure, that sounds fine. We want to go ahead and have a command, and that command is probably just gonna be yarn hot, I think is Laravel's default there. Why don't we go ahead and run some build steps, and for that build step, let's do like a npm install. Sounds good. Why don't we, just because we want to make things a little fancier, why don't we do the same thing for our app server? We're going to have a build step that runs, in our case, composer install. Why not? That sounds good. Okay, so let's save that. Let's see, for Laravel stuff, I usually like to, I don't know why, but I always go with Postgres instead of using MySQL. So things we just normally have to change. So DB host, let's say database. If we're going to go with Postgres, port's going to be 5432. Pretty sure by default. I think database name Laravel. I think for a Postgres recipe, you have to change this to Postgres just because the container Bitnami uses a little odd. I don't think we really have to mess with anything else right now. So let's just Lando start. Let that start up. Yeah, it could be that I've done something wrong here, but I kind of think that that's all we really need to do. So let's let it start up. And while it's starting up, while we're at it, let's take a look at the Laravel Mix docs. So yeah, here's Laravel Mix latest documentation. Let's see, Laravel Mix options, I think what we want. Right, there's some stuff here for just regular mix options. Let's see what else we've got. Hot module replacement. That's probably important for what we're trying to get done here. So yeah, you see this at the bottom. It has setting options, HMR options. I'm guessing there's going to be some dragons here because the way Lando is running, we have a proxy that is what our browser sees. And that proxy is going to be some custom domain that we're going to assign to the node service here in a little bit. But it's different than the port and host that the internal container thinks it's running on. So for instance, we might be inside the container, we might be booting up Webpack's dev server on like port 3000, and we might have it set to hosts like 0.0.0.0 so that it accepts requests from all hosts. That's inside the container so that it can take in requests that come through the proxy. And then when the browser actually displays the files, it's going to be a proxy. So we're going to have a completely different host, and it's going to be on port 80 or port 443. So this is where, if you reference back to the browser sync setup we had going last time, there's a disconnect between what port the scripts for any reloading or any of that's going to be served on, and the port that that's actually being that the server is actually inside the container is actually outputting. So okay, so if we scroll back up here, yeah, our composer install fired off, which is great. That means that whenever somebody runs this, they're going to automatically get their installs. npm went ahead and ran, and now it's just waiting for the database service to start up. And you know what? Let's we're gonna real quick kill this. I'm gonna go ahead and edit our lando.yaml because I think we've got to tell it database here is going to be Postgres because that's what we set it up as. Well, actually, why don't we go back in there? Why don't we set up the proxy while we're here too? So proxy, and it's going to be for the Webpack service, and we'll call it Webpack HMR-test.lando.site. I'm going to assume that it's going to boot up on port 3000 because it's kind of what everybody does by default. We might find out that's different, but this syntax here where you put the domain followed by a colon and then a port number is how we tell the proxy for Lando which port inside the container we're going to proxy to our standard proxy port. So by default, Lando is going to bind our proxy to ports 80 and 443, which is standard for when you go to a site on the internet and there's no port after the the domain. That's running on port 80 and port 443. So secure connections are on port 443. non-secure connections are on port 80. So that's what lets us have URLs that don't have a domain, or I mean that don't have a port, you know, after the domain section. So so that confuses a lot of people when you're looking at the proxy configuration. They see that :port 3000, :port 8080, whatever it's going to be, and they're assuming that's what they should be hitting in their browser. But the way it's actually set up, that tells the proxy to map that port inside the container to the standard domain that you're mapping it to. So that's, yeah, I find a lot of people getting confused by that. So whatever we can do to try to get rid of that confusion is probably helpful. I'm going to go ahead and grab a second tab here just so I can just follow the logs, because it's helpful sometimes when you get slow Lando startup to keep an eye on the logs so that you can see sort of what's going on. Right now it looks like the PHP container is starting up, but it just exited. Probably because it had to stop the containers and start them again for the next build step. That can happen when your build steps are running. It'll go down while it's doing these different startup steps. So we'll wait till it gets to that part where it tells us it's waiting for connection to some sort of server, and at that point, I'll start checking in on the logs again. Okay, so here we're seeing the npm install going. So let's just take a look at things again. Okay, so here we are. We see that we're getting some errors with the startup here where it's saying, hey, can't find where I'm supposed to start up the dev server. Okay. So that gives us a little clue. It's probably the next thing we're actually going to want to look at. So, okay, well, that's running. Why don't we pop Vim open. Let's take a look at our webpack.mix.js. All right, so this is the default that you get with Laravel. So let's just take a look and see. All right. So yeah, by default, looks like it runs on port 8080. Okay. So that kind of makes sense as to why we saw 8080 popping up in all those different places. So let's do, you know, on top of this JavaScript here, let's go ahead and do options. I'm going to say HMR options. And at a minimum here, I think we're going to want to change the host, because our host, if you remember, is going to be like Webpack dash, what do we call it? What was it? HMR test? HMR test.lndo.site. And I won't bother overriding the port right yet. Oh, well, that's a lovely indenting. Oh well, no biggie, don't really care. So let's go back over, hop over to our first terminal here. Yeah, you're gonna see it's mad now about the HRM. Ah, that's great. I spell so well. So let's go ahead and look at the Lando.yaml again. Let's change this. So this is HMR test, and we found out that it's not running on port 3000. It's on 8080. So we're going to go ahead and do a Lando rebuild again. We're going to let that run its build steps one more time. Should be pretty quick, I hope. And you can see that this normally is looking at this localhost 48080 to try to get the bundle script. Makes sense. Oh no, we're trying to be hacked by ourselves. No worries. I have to, at some point, I have to actually tell Firefox to trust the CA certificate I've got set up for Lando. I just haven't done it on this computer, which is why it's complaining. I've done it for Chrome, but just not for Firefox yet. Okay, nothing to install or update. Cool. Laravel's doing its patch discovery. No big deal. So it's stopping the app server because it just did its build step. Now the node build steps are running in our Webpack server. Great, that all went fine. Nothing to do. So it's just moving on. Now it's going and it's going through the process of actually running our start commands, getting everything actually running. Let's go ahead and tail the logs again. Let's follow those. Reference error JS is not defined. Well, that's no good. So let's go ahead and look at what did I do wrong. Oh, we need to put a dot in front of JS. Yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you internet correctly. There we go. That looks a little better. Let's go ahead and just re-indent. You know what? Let's try to just make this look a little bit better. There we go. Yes, I forget that when you're not in Drupal land, the indents are quite a bit gnarlier. Let's go ahead and rebuild again. You know what? Actually, let's not bother rebuilding. Let's just try restarting. We don't really need build steps to run again. We just want to take the containers down and run the start commands again, because what we're trying to test out here is that the Webpack hot module replacement is working, and so we want to actually really just restart the dev server. I don't really care about rerunning those install steps all over again. We haven't changed any environment variables or anything that would require a rebuild. Let's go ahead and look at the logs again, see how things are going. Ooh, Bitnami Nginx container. Never actually noticed that come up in the logs before. All right, cool. So we've got, at the very minimum, we've got Laravel running here. Database service is still kind of waiting to do its thing. That's pretty common. The databases always take the longest to come up. Let's see if our Webpack server is running yet. All right, so we're getting the same kind of thing where the browser's kind of mad because, okay, we're getting a bad gateway, so we know something is up with that setup. Let's try tailing just the logs for just that service. So we're going to look at Webpack. We're also going to follow them. Okay, so we've got a successful compile. That's good. This looks old to me, where it's complaining about JS not being a thing. But let's open another tab so we can run Vim here. take a look at webpack.mix.js again. Okay, so yeah, we are doing a .js, so that should work just fine. All right, let's exit out of that. Okay, so we've got yarn running hot. Here's our actual entry command. That's the command that's being run for the container. It says it has compiled, but yeah, we're still getting an error. Okay. Let's open up the Webpack docs. Dev server. Okay, so looking at the web server config. What does host actually do? Because it might be that I'm proxying the wrong host. Let's find that out. Host. Okay. Specify host use. You might server be accessible externally. Interesting. Well, let's try it with the 0000. Let's try that. Because that kind of looks, when you see that reference 0.0.0.0, that usually tells you like, hey, I want you to be listening everywhere, which is probably a good setup for this because we're in local dev and the IP of the incoming request could be anything, and the host that it's being hosted on could be just about anything. So probably a good setup. Let's go ahead and rebuild this time. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit longer, but just to be sure. So we've got the host change going there. Let's see, the other one that I'm imagining is going to be a thing is the sock path or sock port. So this could potentially be an issue where when it tries to mount the socket, it might try to default to doing it on port 8080 because it knows that's where it's trying to serve it. And then that's going to cause a problem when we access the site in the browser because it's going to be looking for port 8080, but we're not running on port 8080. So that could be something for us to look at. We might have to change this setting at some point. Which, if we look back at our HMR settings from Mix, yeah, HMR options, we should be able to override it there. Okay, so build steps are running. That's good. Hopefully this ends with a happy ending. We're able to get this running. If not, we'll have to, look at how we can possibly make it a little easier for Laravel in the future. But I'm guessing we've got a way to get through this. All right, and our build steps are still running. This is the slowest part, as usual. Okay, great. So now we're going to start all the services back up again. Let's try to keep an eye on what's going on in the Webpack service. Okay. Now it's running. It's trying to boot us up. Server's waiting. Okay, so it's compiled successfully. Probably means that that's done. Okay, so that's still not coming up. We're getting a bad gateway. Let's try doing it without HTTPS just to see. Okay, still getting a bad gateway. Okay, that's not great. So let's go back and look at our Lando.yaml here. So we've told it to expect the server on port 8080. That makes sense. So let's try to, just kind of dummy test our setup here and try doing this just ourselves. So what if we did like an npm run hot wait and see what comes back here. This is going to take a second to run all its stuff. And ideally, if we're running this without Lando, it's going to be like localhost port 8080, more than likely. All right, so right now it's saying it can't get. All right, let's give it a second. See if maybe there's something else going on here. Right, yep. So we'd assume it would be localhost 8080. So I'm going to go ahead and try to load this again. All right, not working. So interestingly, I think the reason we're getting a bad gateway is because it doesn't work out of the box the way we'd expect it to. Yeah, part of that might be because we don't have Laravel itself running. So okay, let's try some other stuff here just to try to confirm. Maybe we need to get this working without Lando first. So what if we just did a PHP artisan serve? Okay, so let's assume localhost 8000 should get us Laravel again. Great, so that's loading Laravel. We know that's working. So you'd expect port 8080 would do something, but my guess is that there's a little bit more to getting the HMR running with Mix than we're kind of getting out of the box. So well, let's try some things. All right, let's have another window here, PHP artisan. So I think what we might want is to make auth, because that's gonna change our routes around a little bit. Okay, so it generates auth scaffolding. All right, so that gives us login register blocks here. Register. Let's try going to /register. See if we get anything. Nope. Okay. So Mix isn't working quite like we expect. So let's go. That's our resources. Let's look at our views. Our app view. How are we doing the Mix.js bundle.js? Okay, so here's our JavaScript. So let's swap this to Mix, see what happens. All right, Laravel self-loads. That's great. All right, that's not working still. Let's try just completely removing the options here. So we're back to pretty vanilla Laravel setup here. How Laravel just comes out of the box. There's PHP artisan serve running. Why don't we go ahead and run npm run hot again. So this is going to remove all of our customizations to Mix. Just going to run it by default. Okay. Yeah, as I suspected, this really isn't making things any more magical. There's probably some stuff up here that we haven't read the manual. Interesting. Okay, so actually, there's the HMR stuff supposed to be running here. Aha. Okay. So the way this works normally, it doesn't boot up its own proxy the same way browser sync would. So that's probably why the person I was talking to in Slack didn't have this working the same way they'd expect to. And I think that's okay. I think that we're maybe thinking of it in a different way than it's actually designed to work, which is no problem. So in reality, hot module replacement should be working right here. So this might be far less complicated than it initially seems to set up. All right, so my guess is that we don't actually, hold on, let's see if we can get this to behave. We don't actually even need a proxy for this to work because it's not actually proxying anything. It's just trying to hot module reload inside our Laravel app. That makes things even easier. So we're just letting this boot up and run. It doesn't even need to be exposed to the public at all. All I think we're going to need to do is tell Laravel Mix options, and we'll set up our HMR options. That's how it's set, right? Yeah, okay. And so we can mess with the host and everything. So this is probably far simpler than we were thinking. So we're gonna say host is gonna be let's see, we're gonna have it running as, oh, you know what? I think we are still gonna want to have a proxy. Yeah, I think that's how we're gonna do it. So we're gonna do Webpack -HMR test.lndo.site. We're going to tell it that our port is 443. Just because I usually like to try to do this with secure connections. Actually, you know what? Let's do it unsecure just because of that issue we were having before with making sure that everything was running properly. Okay, so let's try it this way. Let's see what happens if we do it this way. We're going to go ahead and we are going to Lando rebuild. So thinking about how the output was running here. This is looking for that on port 8080. You know what? No, I don't think we probably don't even need the proxy. Let's go ahead and get rid of the proxy just because we don't want the URL scanner to spend forever trying to get to start up. Let's go ahead and get rid of these build steps just so that things start up a little faster. So you guys don't have to wait for me to have that run. Let's go ahead and stop that server. Let's go ahead and stop that server. Okay, at this point, we've got that. Let's do Lando rebuild. We're going to try hitting just the regular proxy URL. And perhaps all we're going to have needed was the port to have been changed to port 80. We'll have to see.
All right. And the general Laravel steps that run from our recipe, we're just running. That's why we're seeing all that. Okay. Let's go ahead and follow the Webpack server again. Okay. There's going to be nothing here. So let's go just our regular site URL. Okay, it's not finished booting yet. That's fine. Oh, it looks like our build steps are still running. We must have not saved the change to make it do less work. That's okay. No big deal. Not going to hurt anything. All right, waiting for the database server to be ready. As always is happening. Let's go ahead and load things up. Cool, we're loaded up. Let's go login route. All right, so this is pretty interesting. Loading failed for the script. Okay. Well, it's interesting, and we see there's double slash here, so something funny about that. Let's go ahead and look at our Webpack config again. All right, so this is how we got things set up. Let's go back and look at our Lando config. Let's go ahead and try putting in another proxy line for Webpack. And we're going to tell it Webpack -HMR test port 8080, because we know that's what it's running on the server. So we might run into an interesting situation where the Webpack server is starting up on the wrong port because of this port config that we're giving it. So this could come back to haunt us. I'm also going to change this. No, do we want to change that now? I don't think we do. So now we're getting a MIME type problem. So in the end, that could be what's causing this to fail. Let's try this here. Nope. Okay, it's not working. Huh. Let's take a look. Looking to. Let's try port 8080. Let's try that. And let's try sock ports. And let's make that 80. Okay, so here we are. Got these things booting up. Let's do Lando rebuild. Since we went ahead and turned those proxy ports back on, that makes sense. So we're waiting for things to boot up still. Well, that's going on. I'm going to turn the fan on because it's getting pretty warm in here. All right. Wait for the database servers, how we're always waiting. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. So we can see in the console that it's looking for port 8080 again. So I think Laravel Mix is trying to be helpful in how we set up the HMR options. So, okay. So we know that it's going to try to look for it on port 8080. And that the socket port doesn't really seem to do anything for us. So we're going to go ahead and just ignore the socket port from the regular dev config. So, you know, actually, what we probably do is just set this to port 80, because since we control the node container, we can just have it boot on port 80, and that's totally fine. So all we need to do then is, instead of doing this 8080 business here, and just map it like that, because inside the container is already going to be port 80 anyway. So then that's going to be less of a problem. Well, let's go ahead and rebuild. Let things get their magic going again. Get some fun noises in here. Yeah, so what I think we're looking for is for this proxy to boot up straight on port 80, and for Laravel to be aware that it's booting on port 80. And since we're not proxying through browser sync the same way we were previously, where browser sync itself is giving us the view to the site. We're actually still loading the original site, and we're trying to just load the scripts from the node service. So that's how things are a little bit different here. A little bit throwing me off at first, but I think mentally wrap my head around it a little later in the day today too. So yeah, getting tired towards the end of the day, but I'm thinking we can get this. Alright, so it's still telling us it doesn't like loading JavaScript here. This might be because our server's not up yet. Highly, highly possible. Let's take a look. Yeah, this might be a big part of the problem too. While we're here, let's do Lando artisan migrate. So that's taken care of. Let's just get our migrations underway. Let's go ahead and, for giggles, let's load under HTTPS so that it stops telling us we can't. Hey, that's no good. Let's register. Be me. Be me. We'll give it password. Password. Let's register. Don't save. No, not now. Alright, cool. So we're logged into our random Laravel app. Right, so if we go home. For some reason it's adding this double slash business here, and it's adding port 80. So That's kind of interesting. So I'm thinking we've got some more things maybe to mess with here in the HMR options. Look at the Laravel Mix options cheat sheet here. That's not really doing much to help us. Like that. Okay, so let's try doing this like straight. Let's reach right down into the Webpack config. Let's try doing it that way. We haven't tried this yet. Might be helpful. So we Webpack config, and inside the Webpack config, we're going to go right to how they would do it in the Webpack config. So let's just hit the dev server config directly. And okay, so the host, we're going to tell it the host is Webpack HMR test.lndo.site. Cool. We're going to tell it a port. So in this case, the port config specify for it to listen to requests on. So why don't we go with the default 8080 that we were expecting? Just to make things maybe, I don't know, to me it's a little clearer, maybe to other people it's not. We don't need to worry about this proxy URL business. At least I don't think we do. So if you have a separate API backend and you want to send API request on the domain, okay, I don't really think that's going to be a thing we have to care about. Live reload, interesting. Let's keep looking. Okay. So sock host and sock path. So let's set the sock host. So let's do sock host is going to be HMR test lndo.site. Cool. And the sock port is going to be port 80 in our case. So let's try doing it this way and see what this gets us. So let's do a Lando restart. Stop the app and start it again. Should skip all those build steps that make it take so long. I think in the future we're going to try to make sure when I'm screencasting this kind of stuff to try to not use rebuild as much as I would in day-to-day life, just because it's really slow. So okay, now it's stopped those containers, it's starting those containers. Let's go ahead and tail the logs to see just, you know, what kind of thing we're getting. All right, so it's looking some stuff up. Okay, it's done compiling. Let's go. Hey, Laravel. So what have we got? All right, so interesting. This is back to trying to do localhost 8080. So that's not right. I mean, certainly don't want that. So, okay, we've messed with the Webpack configuration. Let's go back to hot module replacement. I think it might turn out that this is going to be a bug that we might have to work out. So we might not end on a happy note here, which is a bummer. Okay. Let's just copy this whole thing, this options block. Let's try messing with Webpack Mix again. Okay. Yep, that's what we're expecting. Let's serve it on port 80. Cool. Kind of surprised that just reaching right into the dev server config like this isn't quite doing it. Might be because this isn't the actual right way to do the config, or it might be just because Mix is already overriding stuff with the HMR. So that's okay. Might turn out that Laravel Mix really isn't set up for this, which is a bummer. I've had situations in the past where I've had to stop using Mix for projects because I ran into weird edge cases like this, particularly around trying to get things like fonts loaded with some of the apps I was working on. But I imagine this should work. Said that several times already, though. So who knows? Okay, yeah. For HTTPS. Let's try HTTP. Yeah. So I think this is going to come down to being probably the bug that's causing the issue. So it might take some tracking down to try to figure out what the MIME type issue is here, why that's coming up that way. But if we look at this, yeah, it's coming back to 404 not found. And I'm not really sure why Webpack is refusing this connection, but I'm sure it has to do with probably what's happening is the port that Webpack is supposed to be serving on and the port that we access in the browser, those being proxied, is causing the problem. So I'm gonna give up for tonight and try to look at this another time. So gonna go ahead and close things off. Thanks.